Hello everyone, it's me Jamie. Welcome back to another video. I know it's been quite a while. I have had a very busy past few weeks, but here I am back in my old bedroom ready to film some more booktube videos, so very excited. Today's video is essentially just my January wrap up, to be honest, but I'm renaming it recent reads, so not to look unprofessional considering it's probably 5 more days of February left. I'm just going to talk about all the books that I read in January. I think I read about 11, so there is quite a lot to talk about. I'm just not going to go into too much detail. I'm just going to tell you my thoughts. I'm probably going to avoid doing synopsises because I feel like synopsises are something that you can find about these books very easily, and a lot of them are very popular books, so you probably already know what they're about. So yeah, wrap-ups mostly just for general thoughts. So the first book I read in January was Beatride by Emily Henry. This is an adult romance. I rated this 2 stars. Not a huge fan of this one, to be completely honest. I feel like this was marketed as a very fun enemies to lovers story about 2 writers who are who write very different genres. One's a romance author, one is a literary fiction author, and they're rivals from college, hate each other, and then they decide to give each other's genres a go to see who actually has it easier, and is it really that hard doing what the other person does. So yeah, I thought it was gonna be very fun, enemies to lovers, lots of witty banter. It was actually just really fucking boring, to be completely honest. It took me a while to get through it, and usually with adult romances that are usually quite light and fluffy, they don't take me long at all. But this one took me quite a while. Just really wasn't a fan. I just really didn't care for the characters. I didn't find them charming. I didn't feel like they had any banter really at all. They just kind of would talk about themselves, and they just weren't interesting enough to get away with that. I feel like the concept was really fun, but just fell a little flat. And also I just feel like there was a lot of heaps of different storylines in here that just felt unfinished. There was a whole storyline with our main female main character and her dad, who had just died in the beginning of the book, and his mistress in another life, which I just found we didn't really get enough of. I just found that really fell to the wayside just so our main characters could go on more dates, which weren't the most interesting part of the book anyway. There was also this other storyline with our male main character's ex-wife, and again I just felt that storyline was also very unfinished, and I feel these storylines were literally just added in for page number and word count rather than our author actually being invested in these other aspects of our characters' lives. I might be in the minority on this one, and to be completely honest, it has been a while since I have read this, so I might not be remembering it very truthfully, but that's kind of just how I feel at the time. Also, our characters' names, January and Augustus, it's almost just our author is trying to be creative but trying so hard that it ended up with something not creative at all. I don't know. It just was kind of naff. Not really a fan. Nothing super offensive or anything, which is why it hasn't got the 1-star rating, but yeah, just something I'm never really going to think about ever again. The next book I read in January, and an absolute new favourite, 5 out of 5 stars, is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. I absolutely loved this book. I feel like this book has been very popular on the internet at the moment, especially with booktube, so I feel like the synopsis has been talked about lots and lots. Also, I've talked about the synopsis heaps in vlogs when I was reading this. I'm sure everyone already knows what it's about, but basically this is an adult contemporary book which discusses so many nuanced themes like performative activism, racism, classism, paternal responsibility, and fetishization of POC. All of this is encompassed in this one 300-page book, and it is done so effortlessly and so unpretentiously. This book was just so accessible and so easy to read. I read it in the space of 24 hours, and despite it being very nuanced and complex, I felt like the writing style was very easy, very, very accessible, and I've already said that word, but it was just such a good book, and it wasn't trying too hard to be very intelligent, and look at all the political activism we're doing, and look at all the themes we're discussing. It was just very it encompassed so much with such a simple story and such a simple way of telling it. The characters were so fleshed out. I loved it so much. I really related to our main character Amira as someone who is also in my early 20s, and watching all my friends go and have degrees and really great jobs, and I'm just sitting here kind of what the hell am I doing with my life? I really found that I could relate to her, and I felt like a lot of other people who read this book, especially a lot of young women, will be able to relate to this character as well. I found our main villains so evil and so intriguing, but like very frustrating. And yes, I'm considering the boyfriend as a villain. If you have read this book, he is so gross. One of the other aspects of this book that I really loved was our main character's relationship with the child that she babysits. As someone who has spent a lot of time around kids, I'm the oldest of 4 children, and my 22-year-old sister has 2 kids, and I've spent a lot of time with them. I felt like Kylie Reid really captured what it's like to be in the presence of a child, and it's just so beautiful to read. I absolutely loved it, and yeah, I definitely recommend this, especially to people who might be slightly afraid of adult fiction. If you mostly do read YA, I feel like that's been a discussion that I've seen online a bit recently about like how people are overwhelmed with like the adult section in bookshops. Well, I'm telling you right now, this one is super easy and I definitely recommend it. The next book I read in January is one that I was very much looking forward to but was kind of disappointed by, and that is A Darker Shade of Magic by Victoria Schwab. I feel like this book is one that has been so hyped up over BookTube. It has been one that I've been very much anticipating finally picking up because I really love V.E. Schwab's writing style in her other books, but I just felt like this one was a little bit too overhyped and it felt a bit flat for me. I rated it 3 out of 5 stars because at the end of the day, I think the world building and the magic system is very unique, and I really am intrigued by what we're going to find out about this world and what's going to happen and like what will happen to the characters. But I felt like the writing style itself was probably the most disappointing. I feel like people ride so hard for this book in terms of people saying that this is an adult book. This is not YA, it is an adult fantasy series. And like, sure, like the characters are adults, but I felt like it almost read like a YA. Like I felt like the characters, it wasn't very complex. The writing style was very simple, and I felt like the ideas were ideas that were very simple as well. That's not to say that I don't love the world that V.E. Schwab has created. Like I think that the magic system is really unique and really cool, and I'm really interested in diving into the rest of the series. But I just felt like it was just a bit plain. Like the writing style itself and the characters were quite plain. There was a lot of telling and not showing when it came to Lila's character, in my opinion. It was very much like, oh, she's such a cutthroat, badass thief. She's so cool. But most of the times we actually saw her doing anything, she was fucking up and she needed the male character to come and save her. So I felt like that was very disappointing because I feel like people love this female character so much and talk about how she's such a strong female character, but that just didn't translate to me. And I think it's because I have read more complex adult fantasies with way cooler characters and way cooler, more badass female characters. So yeah, little disappointing in that regards as well. I also feel like the structure was very off. Like we got so much info dumping and world building in the first 100 pages, but nothing really happening. And then all of a sudden everything happening all at once. And I was just like, whoa, slow down. Like I am so confused. I just felt like structure was a bit off, pacing was a bit off, and characters, I really liked Cal, and there were some other side characters that I really liked, but I felt like they almost fell to the wayside. Victoria Schwab was spending so much time telling us how badass Lila was, and it was just kind of like, okay, well, sure, I want to see it. I want to see it with my own eyes, but I also am more interested in these other characters. Yeah, I also really didn't understand the villain's motivation, which is really disappointing because I find that villains are like some of the most important parts of fantasy series, and really having a strong motivation and a strong sense of why they are who they are and they're not just like evil is really important, and I felt like this book was lacking that. 3 out of 5 stars. We'll still read the other books in the series, I believe. We'll give the second one a go, and if that one is just as disappointing as this one, I'm not sure, but we'll see. Don't let me down, Victoria Schwab, please. The next book I read in January was another stunning read, and that is Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. I rated this 4 out of 5 stars, and I absolutely loved it. I already knew that I would like it because I loved Mary H.K. Choi's writing style in Emergency Contact. I love her very realistic and very flawed characters, and this just gave me more of the same. I absolutely adored it. I feel like Emergency Contact definitely blew me away more as soon as I picked it up, whereas this one was more of a slow burn for me. but still just as good. I think it's because we only got one perspective in this book, and it was a male perspective, and I really liked Mary H.K. Choi's realness when writing from a female perspective, which was what she did in Emergency Contact. So I think maybe that was why this one was a little bit more slow to start for me, but by the end of it I was in tears and I absolutely loved it. It was a very personal read for me in a way. Like, I feel like there was a lot to relate to. Again, our main character Pablo is in his early 20s, going through a lot of financial strife and really doesn't know what he wants to do with his life, which is again something that I very much connect to at this point in my life. Same with such a fun age. So that was very personal for me and very hard to read at the same time, because I was like, a lot of the negative aspects that Pablo had in his personality are things that I don't like about myself. So it was really interesting to read and see it on the page and be frustrated at this character for acting like how I do. Like, so it was really hard to read and very personal, but also just very eye-opening, and I felt very seen and also learned a lot of lessons through reading this about myself. And yeah, I don't know, another really personal read. I also just love the theme that Mary H.K. Choi plays with, and the idea of two people that love each other so much and they have such a strong bond, but that isn't enough to have a realistically working, functioning relationship. So having two people that love each other and have a really strong connection but just can't be together because of circumstance is an idea that is so heartbreaking to me, and I really loved seeing it represented on the page, and it just really touched my heart. Mary H.K. Choi just manages to create such an emotional response to me with her contemporaries, and I know that they aren't for everyone. I know that a lot of people have trashed this book and have trashed Emergency Contact, but guys, just give me this. Just give me this. I love her books, and the fact that she can stir up these emotions in me, it just means that they will always be very special, even though, you know, they're not perfectly crafted books and people may have their issues with them, and, you know, they may make people angry, but I just really love the realness and the rawness that she manages to create in her worlds. So I love it. I love it. The next book I read in January was another disappointment, and that is Lock Every Door by Riley Sagar, just because this has been so hyped up by other thriller readers that I felt like it was going to be like the best thriller that I have ever read, because I've also really loved Riley Sagar's other books, but unfortunately I just feel like this was probably the worst out of the 3 books that I have read by him. I rated it 3 out of 5 stars because at the end of the day I really loved the concept, and I thought, you know, a lot of it was really fun and like it was well written, but I didn't find it all that thrilling, to be completely honest. Like, I just wasn't really on the edge of my seat either, and that's one of the most important things when I read thrillers, is that I want to be like constantly turning the page and wanting to know what happens and on the edge of my seat, like heart racing, and I just feel like that didn't capture that essence for me. I feel like our main character was incredibly bland, and I feel like she had this really crazy tragic backstory, and Riley Sagar was more invested in putting all these tragic events into her like her life and into her past, rather than focusing on giving her like any personality traits, any interests, anything that really made her a 3-dimensional person, which was a shame, because I feel like connecting to your main character is something that's really important when it comes to thrillers. Like, I feel like you want them to survive, you know, and if you're not really connected to your main character, it's like there's not really any stakes when I was reading the book. Also, I found that her actions at the end were like so cool, but came out of nowhere, because we hadn't really been given this sense that she was like that badass of a person. Like, she was very meek and timid and very like, oh, I've had this really, really hard life, but then all of a sudden she pulls all these fucking tricks out of the bag, and I'm like, where has this come from? I also found that Riley Sagar put so many different side characters into this book, and I guess they were all kind of supposed to be red herrings. Like, I don't really know why he put so many characters in. It was a little confusing, and especially because no character really had a distinct voice or a distinct personality. It just felt like they had their role to play in the story, but they weren't really people, if that makes sense. That's another reason why it was just kind of disappointing. I think the best thing about this was the plot. Honestly, I love a haunted building story. I love thrillers with really good plots, and I feel like this one had one. There was like kind of this one red herring that I wish kind of was the actual vibe of it, because I kind of, not to like give any spoilers or anything, but I love like occult storylines and stuff like that, and I kind of wish it was more that avenue, but I still think that, yeah, it was like a really good plot and a really good ending. It's mostly just the characters and the writing style for me that I didn't really mesh with, but still like an alright thriller. I still think if you want to read it, pick it up. I'm not going to like steer you away from it, but I do believe that Riley Sagar's books, other books that I have read, are just that much a bit better. You know what I mean? Yeah. The next book I read in January was a reread, and it is Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. I read this for the St. Vladimir's read-along, hosted by Read by Tiffany, Transformers, and Sandy Reads a Lot. And oh my god, I loved diving back into this world. I feel like this book has aged so well, which is very interesting because obviously it was written in 2007. There is a bit of girl hate, there is a bit of slut shaming, you know, stuff like that. It was 2007, it's the age of like Misery Business and like all the Fall Out Boy lyrics that are very sexist. But I think in other ways it has aged really well. Like, our main characters, while there is slut shaming, it's not really from our main characters, it's more from side characters slut shaming our main characters because they are very sex positive, which I find to be very important in YA about like 17-18-year-olds, because 17 and 18-year-olds are having sex. I just found that to be really, really cool. I thought the main female relationship between our two main female heroines was really good because I just really like that our most important relationship in this book is a relationship about female friendship. I love our two male love interests for the main female characters. Just everything about this was so good. I thought the world building was great. It's not super info dumpy right at the beginning. It really has some really good devices about learning more about the world. Yeah, I thought, obviously the book's not perfect, but I just loved it so much and I had such a fun time rereading this, and I cannot wait to get to the next ones. The next book I read in January is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. This is a adult, I want to say anthology, like a short story collection, but all of the stories are very much interconnected, so it very much feels like one whole story as opposed to like little vignettes. It is vignettes essentially, but it feels very complete. It doesn't feel like separate stories. Do you know what I mean? Writing style was stunning. It was almost written in verse. In fact, I think it is written in verse. Like, there's no punctuation or anything like that. I just think that this meant the book flowed so effortlessly between our different characters and our different situations and our time jumps as well. It was never confusing despite the fact that we were jumping perspectives and time jumps so often. I felt like it did it so well. I also just found like it really captured humanity at its core. Like, there were so many characters that I loved and so many characters that I wanted to throttle, and it's just, yeah, it was just a really important book about a whole different group of people from all different walks of life. This also won the Man Booker Prize in 2019, so obviously it is very, very good and a really, really great step for me into adult literary fiction. I have read literary fiction before, but I just felt like this one was super accessible and a really good one for other non-literary fiction readers to pick up as well. I just thought it was great. The only reason I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 is just because there were a few character perspectives that I felt dragged on a little bit, and I felt like I wasn't super invested in their stories as opposed to other people's. But at the end of the day, still really good. I think I finished it in about a week, which is pretty good for a 450-page literary fiction book in my opinion. So yeah, really liked this one, and I think a lot of people should read it. Okay, I'm so sorry, I'm absolutely sweating up a storm here. It's so freaking hot, so I'm just going to try and get through the last 3 books as quick as possible. I know I haven't explained anything really in that much depth, but hey, this is my first video after a 3-week break, so please, let's cut her some slack, cut the girl some slack, please. The next book was a 5-star read for me, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Thank God V.E. Schwab kicked me and bullied me with a dark shade of magic and said, fuck you, I'm not gonna let you enjoy this book, and then picked me back up and gave me a little hug with Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I absolutely loved this. I actually annotated this one and I definitely tabbed it up a lot. I know that a lot of people have issues with this book, and I feel like that's completely within their right, but I just felt like this was completely the right book at the right time for me. Like, it just really touched my heart. I cried. I hardly ever cry in books, but I actually really cried a lot in this one, like tears streaming down my face. I feel like a lot of people also say this book is really, really slow, but I don't know if that's true. Like, I feel like it is very fast paced. Like, I feel like within the first 100 pages so much had happened and I really knew what was going on. I also read it really fast. I really flew through it. Past the halfway mark, I think I finished the last half of the book in one sitting. I thought that our sexy devil character was absolutely stunning. I think Addie's relationship with Henry was just so heartbreaking and so beautiful, and the time jumps were just really satisfying for me as well. I just really loved this giant saga of a book. I can understand why some people think it is quite repetitive, but I thought every single moment in this book was very necessary. So even if we were visiting places that were like, you know, Addie had already visited before, or there were moments that felt reminiscent to moments like that we have already seen. I felt that they were all very integral to Addie LaRue's development as a character, so I just really liked it. So I have nothing really much else to say about this. I just love it. I'm sorry, I'm not a critical reader. I just read for enjoyment. The next book, one that is very disappointing. I actually did DNF it at the 100-page mark, but it is Girl A by Abigail Dean. I actually received this arc from HarperCollins New Zealand. It is a thriller. I can't really tell you what it's about because in the first 100 pages I didn't know. There were so many time jumps and so many different characters that were introduced, but it was all very confusing and very poorly explained in my opinion, and I just felt I'm not going to get through this and have a good time, so I did put it down. That's really all I have to say. Like, I just didn't know what it was about. The writing style was very boring and I wasn't thrilled, and there was lots of information that was being shoved at us, but it was just not well articulated, so I didn't really know what was going on at any stage. I'm very sorry, HarperCollins, that you sent me an arc. Very kind, but it's just not for me. I know there's a big TV show coming out for this book, like it's supposed to be the new like Sharp Objects or something in that sense, and I'll watch it to see if maybe the TV show will do a better job than the book, but yeah, it's just not for me, sorry. And the final book I read in January, I've read quite a bit, but the final book I read in January is Somewhere Only We Know by Maureen Gu. Maureen Gu writes really cutesy, like fluffy YA contemporaries. This is the second Maureen Gu book that I have read, and I don't think I'll be picking up another one because both of those books have been 2 stars. I really love that Maureen incorporates so much Korean pop culture into her books because obviously she's a Korean author, and I personally love Korean pop culture. Like, this book is about a K-pop star and the other book I read was about K-dramas. Both things that I enjoy, both like forms of media that I really like. But this just felt really flat. I felt like our 2 main characters were just super unlikable. Our male main character was just such an asshole. Like, he's working as a paparazzi when we first meet him, who was like the scum of the earth, and spends the entire time lying to our K-pop star and manipulating her. So already I'm not rooting for them. I don't want them to get together. But then our K-pop star very much just acts like a child, and like in the first time we see her, she's like just taken some sleeping pill, like 1 sleeping pill and some anxiety medication, and then decides to leave her hotel room, but then she's literally acting like she's blackout drunk. And like, I've taken anxiety medication before and I haven't taken a sleeping pill, but I still know that my anxiety medication, it doesn't do anything. Like, it doesn't make me high, it just soothes my rapid heartbeat. Like, so I just like really didn't understand that whole concept, and I just felt like it was a bit gross that our 21-year-old character was acting like a 4-year-old. It just felt weird to me. And then this is also when like our main character sees her and is all like, oh, she's so beautiful, and I'm like, she's acting like a child. It's a bit weird. I also feel like we just had our characters have the same conversations over and over again. Like, this was the definition of repetitive, so I just really wasn't invested. A trope I love is books about famous people, like Evelyn Hugo. Like, don't get me fucking started, love it. Permanent Records about a famous person, like I love it. Like, there are so many books about famous people that I really love, that's a trope I really like reading about. But I think what I have realized that I love about that trope is when people like come into fame and we see them having to deal with it for like the first time. Our K-pop star in this book is already famous and all she does is complain about it, and I just don't really vibe with that. Like, it was just really draining for me to read about, and I just didn't like it. I felt like some of the like humorous lines, like the jokes and banter that they shared with each other was really cringy and not funny at all. And yeah, it's a shame because I really had high hopes with Maureen Gu's books. I thought like she would just be a really fun author that I could rely on when I wanted to like feel good and like have a good time, but I just think they're a bit young for me. Like, I just don't know about these ones. But yeah, sorry Maureen, I don't think I'll be reading more of your books. So those are all the books that I read in January. I know this video was a little chaotic, and yeah, let me know if you want me to include synopses in my wrap-ups next time. I just find like it makes the video so long. I mean, this video might already be long, I don't know, but I just find that like I end up repeating myself a lot because I already do talk about synopses in vlogs and hauls and TBRs. I don't know, let me know how you feel more about this style of talking about books. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully more videos will be coming in the future now that I'm back home and feel more comfortable filming. Let me know what you thought of these books as well, and hopefully I'll see you very soon. Bye!
But she said, Cindy, don't cry, and I don't